Russell Henley won the Arnold Palmer in spectacular fashion last weekend. But when I saw what irons he was using for that fantastic win, it got me thinking, what other pros are using old Titleist equipment to win tournaments? Especially this guy that isn't even sponsored by Titleist, yet still has some pretty affordable pieces in the bottom of his bag. Guys, how you doing? Welcome back to a brand new video. Simon here, SAS Golf Academy. And apologies for the lack of uploads. I have been working very hard on what I believe is the first ever second-hand online driver fitting course. And to be honest, I have some kind of understanding why this has never been done. And that's because there's a lot to cover if you want to get it right and accurate for the people that are gonna watch it. Which brings me neatly into my first club through this entire Titleist bag build, and why sometimes newer equipment doesn't necessarily mean better equipment. Patrick Cantley, ranked number 17 in the world, is still using a Titleist 915 fairway wood in his bag. And thanks to the boys at Replay Golf for supplying all the clubs for today's video. But there's a reason why I got this 913 with a very stiff O-band shaft in it, because I kind of want to prove a point. And that's to do with the fact confidence is the first reason a lot of these clubs are in the pros bag. They have no negative thoughts when they stand over them, and they produce the numbers. And more importantly, the yardages that they want them to. And the reason why I've chosen this very D-loft, this is a mini driver, 13.5 is very low. And this X-Stiff 85 gram Devotion shaft is a low, mid, launch and spin shaft, meaning I've essentially got a relatively affordable mini driver in 2025. Don't get me wrong, we've excelled in certain areas in this industry over the last 10 years, but what happens if those advances in technology mess up the numbers and yardages and overall confidence level that pro is looking for with that particular club? Well, it's not going to get upgraded, is it? And considering my channel's all about good value and then stressing the importance of sound technique, I couldn't be happier with my newest sponsor to the channel, Swing Tweaks. And that's exactly what Swing Tweaks is: affordable, good value and sound quality advice. A lot of you guys just want confidence on the range, knowing you've been pointed in the right direction. Some of you more advanced golfers that want to get more analytical, maybe not have one thing to work on, but potentially two. Luckily, Swing Tweaks isn't just a generic coaching platform, but has individual PGA professionals that are going to tailor your feedback and your lessons to what you want and your particular level. All you need to do is take a video down the line and a video face on, and then a brief description of what's going wrong and what you want to improve going forward. You have a very well customized program when it comes to drills, techniques and feelings to further improve your game for not necessarily that much money. With the theme and notion of technique and practice, these definitely are the pinnacle of that. For example, it's how I kind of know this player, especially with this build and these sky marks on this fairway would have actually struggled with the wedges, and when he did hit it straight, not necessarily get it to go that far. And the reason I say this is that this whole club just screams, keep my launch and keep my spin down, because my face is incredibly open on the way down and I'm very steep, causing those sky marks and also causing quite a lot of backspin. Again, with that steep open face technique with this wedge, 56 degree, I highly wouldn't recommend a Vokey, especially not this S grind, because you'll just be hitting flop shots 24/7. Very difficult to hit into wind. Considering that technique would have very big, deep divots, I'd recommend something a bit more like this, like a CBX wedge, for example. Big sole, nice and chunky, so that if you do hit the ground before the ball, you potentially have a chance of trying to get that ball somewhat towards the target. However, the reason that Scotty doesn't necessarily need to change his wedges is because I imagine he's got loads of SM8s that are very similar design and build. Heads keep getting renewed, new grooves. And if you've got a 56 degree wedge that does the distance that you want it to do, what's the point in changing? Here's the SM9. Again, this is 54 degrees, 10 degrees bounce, S grind. This could be the first time I've actually hit an SM10 wedge. Tiny bit heavy, that one. She's going to want to fly, she is. Ironically, I struck the SM8 the best. The SM9 spun more because I leaked it right at target. And then obviously the SM10 went the furthest. Well, I kind of hit it a bit heavy, as we can see from that higher launch and less spin. Overall, if you're looking to get into single figures and want to take your wedge game seriously, an SM8 is great value, in my opinion. It's going to offer you certain grinds to play those shallow, fizzing, low shots into the green. And as long as they've got half decent grooves, they're going to spin just as much as potentially anything new that's come out recently. I think we should talk about the least popular Scotty Cameron to actually ever exist. And when I was going through the long list of pros that use Scotty Camerons, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of them. There's more using Odyssey, ironically. But as you can see, all of these are just tailored, different, built for that particular Tour Pro. And we're not going to spend a long time on this. The only thing I would say is, if you buy a Scotty Cameron, 34 inches long, make sure that it's very generic. Make sure it's got the original grip on it. Don't buy anything that doesn't have the original grip, as it'd be a lot harder to sell. 150 pounds, 160 pounds, 170 pounds, you are not going to lose any money. For me, this is as close as it gets to investing in a watch. It probably won't ever go up in value unless a Tour Pro starts winning tons of tournaments with an old Scotty Cameron. But for a lot of you that want a face balance putter and want something that's never going to devalue, this is kind of my prime pick. The longer I've been a part of this industry and the longer I've played this game, the more I realise Titleist have actually played an absolute blinder compared to every other manufacturer that obviously brings out new equipment. Especially with the driver, because don't get me wrong, drivers can be very confusing for a lot of people, especially the ones starting the game. So the TSI1 or the GT1 or whatever brand it is, the 1 is the beginner one, the 4 is the more advanced, smaller head, lower launching, more controlling, you get it. The second thing that they've done that I think is ingenious is that it doesn't really matter that their Titleist player is using a driver that came out almost 5 years ago. Because guess what, from this angle, and more importantly, the TV camera's angle, it doesn't look any different. And this TSI3, I've always said now, is great value. Used to be £400 secondhand 4 years ago, now 200, 190. Obviously, if you want the more forgiving version, the TSI2. Actually, there's quite an even split through the Titleist players. As I said, it's the most used driver on tour, and again, very evenly split between GT and then the TSR version, which again, more around 250, 280. And to be honest, I think value for money, the TSI gives you everything the other two do. But if any of those players are on the 18th and they've got a hit driver down the middle and you look from behind and you see that, you automatically presume it's a GT in their hand, whereas the other manufacturers that, let's say, go a bit more garish, a bit more bold, a bit more striking, well, if a player chooses to use that, well, everyone knows about it. Which brings us on to last weekend's winner, Russell Henley, and his T100 irons, and why I haven't necessarily got the T100s with me. I always remember Jordan Spieth using an AP2 iron back in the day, 718, or maybe it was 716, lofted at 34 degrees. And I guess a lot of people thinking, especially at the time, because a lot of pros used a lot more bladed clubs then than, let's say, now, is why is Jordan... Oh, that's definitely a bit pulley. Using a cavity back. Now, Russell actually uses the T100, so they're lofted at 34 degrees. This is lofted at 32 degrees, which, to be honest, is pretty ample enough for a lot of you guys that want distance and control in terms of spin. However, Titleist, in my opinion, are quite unique when it comes to this level of forgiveness, i.e. toe weight and obviously center of gravity behind the face, and actually quite traditional lofts. Like most manufacturers, if you want 34 degrees with a 7 iron, you have to go to basically a butter knife. And to be honest, I haven't compared all the T100s over the last 6 years in terms of what the difference is between Russell's 2019 one and obviously the brand new ones. However, if you stand over the ball with a bit of confidence behind it, and it produces the numbers that you want it to, not really much need in changing, is there? Guys, thank you ever so much for watching. Please leave this video a like, subscribe if you're new. Catch you guys later.